There is a piece of land in Kent in England, just 17 minutes from central London by train, that was supposed to change everything. It was going to be bigger than Disneyland Paris, 3 times the size of any theme park Britain had ever seen. A £3.5 billion destination that would draw 12 million visitors a year. It had Doctor Who, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, a fire-breathing dragon castle, and the biggest indoor water park in all of Europe. The concept art was breathtaking. The scale was unprecedented. The ambition was, honestly, extraordinary. And today, that piece of land in Kent still looks exactly like this. Empty, windswept, wild, not a single brick was ever laid. What's up, guys? My name is Henry, and in this episode of Cancelled, let's find out what really happened to the London resort. The £3.5 billion theme park that 12 years of promises couldn't build. Britain has never had a world-class branded theme park. That's a fact that surprises most people. You've got Paris with Disneyland, Japan with Universal Studios, America with, well, everything. And then Britain, one of the most visited countries on Earth, with nothing. For over a decade, millions of British families were told, help is coming. Something extraordinary is being built for you. Just wait. They waited, and waited, and waited. And what they got instead was a spider. I know, stay with me on that. It all started in a karaoke bar in South Korea. A Paramount Pictures executive, singing away somewhere in Seoul, turned to a British leisure consultant named Tony Sefton and casually asked why London, one of the most visited cities in the entire world, had no major branded theme park. Sefton, who had spent 25 years consulting for places like Legoland, California, Blackpool Pleasure Beach and the National Trust, said he'd look into it. He did, and on October 8, 2012, the London Paramount Entertainment Resort was announced to the world. The location was the Swanscombe Peninsula in Kent, a 535-acre slab of derelict former cement works between Dartford and Gravesend, sitting just 17 minutes from central London by high-speed rail. The initial vision was stunning. A £2 billion resort backed by Paramount Pictures, which would feature rides based on Mission Impossible, Star Trek, The Italian Job and The Godfather, and opening in 2019. That date is important. Remember that date. Now, before we get into everything that went wrong, and there is a lot that went wrong, let's talk about what this was actually supposed to be, because it was genuinely exciting. The final master plan revealed in late 2019 showed 7 fully themed lands. The studios, the woods, the kingdom, the isles, the jungle, the starport, and a grand arrival boulevard called the High Street. The studios was described as a gritty modern-day warehouse district roaring with big blockbuster thrills, home to Mission Impossible and The Italian Job. The kingdom was medieval, castles, swords, dragons. The starport was the 23rd century, a landing zone for alien encounters and, yes, and Star Trek. Over 50 rides and attractions were planned, with roughly 70% housed indoors to deal with British weather. Smart decision, honestly. The IP partnerships were astonishing. Paramount Pictures gave them Mission Impossible, Star Trek, A Quiet Place, The Godfather and Ghostbusters. BBC Studios offered Doctor Who, Sherlock and Top Gear. ITV Studios brought Thunderbirds. Aardman contributed Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep. The scale was meant to be staggering. 4 hotels with 3,550 rooms total, Europe's largest indoor water park, a 3,000-seat convention centre, an esports arena, and what was described as the biggest performing arts centre in all of Europe. Projected visitor numbers, 6.5 million in year 1, rising to 12.5 million by 2038, which would have made it the busiest theme park in all of Europe, surpassing Disneyland Paris. 48,000 jobs by 2038, £50 billion in economic activity over 25 years, and the government was on board too. In 2014, the Chancellor George Osborne backed the project, and it became the first commercial venture ever given nationally significant infrastructure project status, meaning it could bypass local planning entirely and go straight to the Secretary of State. On paper, this looked real. This looked like it was actually happening. Now, every project like this needs someone to actually pay for it, and in August 2013, LRCH was acquired by the Kuwaiti European Holding Company Group, the investment vehicle of a young Kuwaiti businessman named Dr. Abdullah Al-Humaidi. Al-Humaidi was in his late 20s. His family had run a respected business dynasty in Kuwait since the 1940s, and someone told him this project would cost, quote, just a few £1 million. It would not cost a few £1 million. Al-Humaydi poured approximately £40 million of his family's personal fortune into the project, then raised another £40 million from friends and family in Kuwait. He would later say, and I want you to really sit with this, that some advisors did tell me it would cost a couple of million. I'd say probably I was too naive at the time. A couple of million. But for the biggest theme park resort ever built in Europe, that naivety would cost him everything. By 2015, the project needed outside investment to move forward, and in October of that year, during President Xi Jinping's state visit to the UK, Chinese firm Sino-Fortune Group announced that they were committing £100 million to the London resort. The headlines were enormous. This felt like serious legitimacy, real money from a real Chinese state visit. There was just one problem. Sino-Fortune Group had been incorporated in London 3 months earlier. In July 2015, the company's own co-director, Sir Richard Haygate, later described the investment commitment as all bollocks, his words, not mine. Haygate added that the firm's founder believed he could raise money without having any capital himself, and called it a crazy idea. The Chinese State Export Credit Agency refused to provide finance. Sino-Fortune's website eventually vanished. Not a single penny materialized. This was the first crack, and it was a significant one. Remember when I said to remember the opening date of 2019? Let me walk you through what actually happened with the timeline of this project, because it is something. 2019, the original announced opening date. It came and went, nothing built. 2024, the revised opening date, announced from 2019 onward. It came and went, nothing built. 2025, a further revision announced via a single tweet. It came and went, nothing built, and through all of this, the leadership of the company was cycling through people at an alarming rate. Chris Townsend, the commercial director who helped deliver the London Olympics, left in 2014. Tony Sefton, the man who literally invented the concept over karaoke in Korea, left in March 2015. The financial director left in 2016. The CEO resigned in early 2017. And then, in 2019, they hired someone who actually sounded like he could do it. Pierre-Yves Gerbeau, known in the British press as PY, was appointed CEO in June 2019, and his credentials were genuinely impressive. He was a former vice president of park operations at Disneyland Paris, widely credited with helping transform the struggling park into Europe's biggest tourist attraction. He then ran the Millennium Dome, where tabloids nicknamed him the Gerbil, and where he turned around one of Britain's most notorious white elephant projects. He later co-founded X-Leisure Holdings, a £600 million property portfolio eventually sold to Land Securities. He was also, for what it's worth, a former professional ice hockey player who had qualified for the 1988 Winter Olympics before a career-ending ankle injury. Gerbeau talked big. "The train has left the station," he told the trade press. "That we now have to move from being a steam train to a Eurostar." He loved the skeptics. He compared the derelict Swanscombe site to Walt Disney's Florida marshes. He boasted of 20 million people on their doorstep. And in one genuinely memorable quote, he said, "We are designing the business plan the way porcupines make love, very carefully." I genuinely respect that quote. Gerbeau also brought Paramount back in a limited capacity. No naming rights, but IP licensing for rides. The BBC and ITV partnerships were in place. Aardman was on board. Things, for the first time in years, actually looked like they were moving. And then came the spider. The distinguished jumping spider, Atulus distinguendus, is a critically endangered species measuring just 3 to 5.5 millimeters in length, smaller than your fingernail. It had first been identified on the Swanscombe Peninsula back in 2003, found at only 2 locations in the entire United Kingdom. Here's the dark irony that makes this story almost too cinematic to believe. Over 150 years of cement quarrying, power generation, and industrial dumping had produced alkaline soil conditions that accidentally created one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in England. The site that everyone had dismissed as worthless derelict land harboured over 2,000 invertebrate species. 82 breeding bird species including nightingales, marsh harriers and bearded tits, and nationally scarce plants found almost nowhere else. The very industrial contamination that developers thought made the land cheap had made it ecologically priceless. On March 11, 2021, Natural England formally designated the Swanscombe Peninsula as a site of special scientific interest. 260 hectares legally protected, effective immediately. LRCH objected furiously. Conservation charity Buglife shot back, calling their objection a transparent PR effort that misrepresents the data of London Resort's own wildlife surveys. On November 10, 2021, Natural England's board confirmed the designation. The chair, Tony Juniper, delivered what may be the most beautiful line in this entire story. The exceptional variety of birds, invertebrates, plants, and geology on this site is an important reminder that nature often thrives in places that might seem scruffy and derelict at first glance. And a 3mm spider had just derailed a £3.5 billion theme park. From that point forward, the project entered a death spiral that was painful to watch. In February 2022, BBC Studios and ITV Studios both walked away. ITV confirmed bluntly, Thunderbirds will not be a part of the park. That same month, the local Dartford MP Gareth Johnson withdrew his support, saying, "I have run out of patience. Far from being the job provider we all hoped for, it is actually costing jobs." And on March 29, 2022, LRCH withdrew their planning application entirely. The day before formal examination was due to begin, Gerbeau insisted they were still 100% committed. He promised resubmission by the end of 2022. In December 2022, Gerbeau resigned. He was never replaced. March of 2023, administrators were appointed. The company's debt stood at £100 million. And a company voluntary arrangement was pushed through with 76.7% creditor approval, just above the 75% legal threshold. Paramount voted against it. They noted a dramatic increase in debts and alleged that certain amounts had been inflated and assigned to a third party in what they called a sham transaction. Among those who voted in favour of saving the project, Ebbsfleet United FC, a small Kent football club owned by Al Humaidi's family. November 2023 brought a double blow. Paramount sued LRCH in the High Court, demanding £13.5 million in unpaid arbitration awards. And that same month, Abdullah Al Humaidi was declared bankrupt. The man who had poured £40 million of his family's money into this dream, then raised another £40 million from friends and family in Kuwait, was now personally bankrupt at 38 years old, a father of two, and facing fraudulent convictions in absentia in Kuwait and unable to return home for fear of imprisonment. He told a journalist, "It has destroyed my life. It has ruined my reputation and left me bankrupt." In June 2024, the 372-acre site was listed for sale. LRCH's option to purchase the land had expired in December 2022 and was never renewed. After 14 years and tens of millions spent, the company had actually purchased just 18 acres of land. On December 19, 2024, High Court Judge Sally Barber found at least 3 serious and irremediable breaches of the CVA. She ruled that LRCH had ceased trading and appeared unlikely ever to do so again. On January 17, 2025, a winding-up order was issued. On March 13, 2025, LRCH entered formal liquidation. Those close to the project confirmed the cupboard is bare. Creditors would receive nothing. LRCH's final statement read, "The dream of the London resort has been ended by the courts. Natural England fatally wounded the scheme. A single creditor has killed it. That single creditor, just to be clear, was Paramount Pictures, the company whose name the entire project had originally been built around. And here is the part of this story that feels almost deliberately ironic. On December 19, 2023, while London Resort was still technically alive, still vowing it would happen, Comcast and NBC Universal quietly announced they had purchased 476 acres of land near Bedford. No grand ceremony, no CGI renders, no karaoke bar origin story, just a check for $271 million. Land purchased outright. Planning approval came in December 2025. Construction began on January 12, 2026, just 3 years after the announcement. Universal Studios UK is now being built, targeting 8.5 million visitors in year 1, 28,000 jobs, nearly £50 billion in economic benefit through 2055, opening projected for 2031. London Resort spent 12 years promising to open. Universal took 3 years to break ground. London Resort never purchased its land. Universal paid $271 million up front. London Resort cycled through 6 CEOs. Universal already builds 5 theme parks. The difference between ambition and execution could not be more starkly illustrated than this. In the end, and in my opinion, the London Resort was a project that was fundamentally too big, too underfunded, and run by people who had no realistic path to actually building it. The concept was genuinely exciting. The location was genuinely clever. But concept art and clever location choices do not build theme parks. Money does, expertise does, execution does. What really killed this wasn't the spider, and it wasn't even Paramount leaving. Those were symptoms, not the disease. The disease was that the core company never had the financial foundation to actually deliver what they were promising. A Kuwaiti family's personal fortune is not a sufficient base to build Europe's largest theme park. A phantom Chinese investment that was, in one director's words, all bollocks is not a business plan. A planning application 25,000 pages long that took years to withdraw does not constitute momentum. What's really sad about this story, beyond the money lost and the careers ended, and Al Humaidi's genuinely heartbreaking personal situation, is what it cost the local community. Around 140 businesses and nearly 2,000 workers on and around the Swanscombe Peninsula spent over a decade unable to expand, unable to hire, unable to invest, frozen in place by the threat of compulsory purchase that never came. Local business spokesman Doug Hilton described the winding up order as lifting, a dark veil that has hung over the businesses for over 12 years. 12 years for nothing. And yet, here's where I'll leave you with something genuinely unexpected. The site today is legally protected as one of England's finest wildlife habitats. The nightingales are still singing. The marsh harriers are still flying. And somewhere in the alkaline chalk dust of that derelict peninsula, a 3mm spider is going about its day, entirely unbothered by any of this. A spider defeated a £3.5 billion theme park. You honestly could not write it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories like it, please do consider subscribing to this channel Abandoned. Anyway, guys, my name is Henry, and thank you very much for watching.